Now to talk to Rowan Davies, a former fraud squad detective with Scotland Yard who now works as a specialist financial crime consultant. Rowan, welcome to the Keiser Report.
That's nice to be here. Thank you.
All right, Rowan Davies, let's talk about the City of London, the global cesspit of fraud behind us. Martin Wheatley has been brought in to clean it up as the head of the newly formed Financial Conduct Authority. Isn't the word conduct downgrading the fraud criminality rampant in the heart of the city?
I think that's actually part of the it's part of the policy of trying to get across the fact that what this really is all about is just about the way the chaps run things, and to make sure that the chaps do the right things in the right way, because they just don't want to give the impression to anybody that this is just a glorified casino and that, you know, you enter here at your peril. So that's why they deliberately choose nice mellifluous words that just basically tamp the whole thing down.
Now, Rowan, a casino, that's often used to describe the City of London or Wall Street. But in a casino, people do have a chance at making money. But what we're seeing here with these crimes against capitalism and society at large is that people are just having their money stolen from them. They have no chance of making money. There's a difference there. It would be good if there was a casino that would at least have some ability to make some money. But here you have nobody. They're just stealing money, right?
The problem is the people making the money are the insiders. And so when you go in there, I used to think that we ought to have a sign over every gate to the City of London, a big sign saying casino. You know, abandon hope, or ye who enter here, like they used to have over the Tower of London.
Rowan, you're talking about insiders. Okay, when David Cameron, the Prime Minister, talks about the aspiration nation, he's not talking about the vast majority of the population here in the UK. There's only a few insiders, and they're manipulating the system, and they're pilfering cash. So that's well and beyond just operating casino whorehouse.
Oh, absolutely. No, they're doing this for their own benefit, entirely for their own benefit.
All right, now on your website, you write that Martin Wheatley, has handed the banksters and their capos a get-out-of-jail card. Now, of course, the use of capos there, you're inferring organized crime.
Yes.
Okay, so explain the get-out-of-jail card.
Okay. One of the big problems that we've had in this country, certainly being committed by the banks and the financial institutions in the last recent years, has been a thing called mis-selling. Mis-selling of financial products to people who were too gullible to realize what they were being sold. Products that were not fit for purpose, they were not fit for their use, but they were told if they wanted a loan, you have to have this insurance product. The problem was with this concept, what they were doing was this was one huge, massive exercise in fraud. It was an institutionalized level of fraud, and it should have been dealt with as fraud. And people should have been prosecuted, and people should have gone to prison for it. Now, the other morning, Martin Wheatley came along, and he was interviewed on Radio 4 on the Today programme. And during the course of that interview, Rowan Davies said to him what was going to be his policy towards issues such as mis-selling. Because he said, this is a major series of crimes, £10 billion worth of crime, which is the money's being allocated to pay these people back. And Martin Wheatley said, they're paying the money back. And Evan said to him, yeah, but what happens with other other thieves, he said, is if they get caught, they are made to pay the money back, but they also do jail time as well. They go to prison. And Martin Wheatley said, I think the word thieves is a very strong word. And he said, and we in the Financial Conduct Authority, he said, we look upon mis-selling. He said that this is professionally incompetent, but we look upon mis-selling as a very long way indeed from fraud. Now, what he was telling them, these people aren't stupid, and they were listening to this. And immediately what he's done is he's told them, oh, as far as we're concerned, you can carry on with this kind of behavior. Fraud is now back on, it's back on the agenda again, because we don't consider it as a crime. We just think it's a very long way. For me, what he did was he handed every single one of these guys a get-out-of-jail card, because the moment they get turned over, they're going to say, well, hang on a minute, the head of the FCA said this was okay.
Right, so he's, to use the parlance of our day in American politics, it's like an Etch-a-Sketch toy. You just flipped it over, shook it, and it's all over, starting from scratch again.
Starting from scratch all over again.
Doing the same crimes all over again, but on a bigger scale.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Okay, so he also suggested, Martin Wheatley did, that in a recent interview, that in the future, it will be a crime to rig LIBOR rates for financial gain. Is it really not a crime now? How come it's always in the future? What about right now?
First of all, let's deal with those issues one by one. First of all, let's get rid of this idea that it's not a crime now. It is a crime now. There are at least two major areas that people who have rigged LIBOR could and should have been investigated, and if the evidence was there, should have been prosecuted for. One of them is an offence under the Theft Act, the offence of false accounting, under Section 17 of the Theft Act. And because in false accounting, it's where you create a record which other people require for an accounting purpose. Well, that's clearly what LIBOR is in terms of working out what interest rates are going to be in other persons' areas of need. But there's also the more generic common law offence of conspiracy to defraud. And these people, anywhere where two people agree together to do an unlawful act, or to do a lawful act with for an unlawful purpose, it's a conspiracy to defraud. And these people could and should have been investigated. But the trouble is, as we've seen so often for so many years, the city fathers, they don't want this message to be publicly aired. That actually this is just a sink, a nest of thieves. So much better what we do is we calm it all down. We bring in some new chap who understands the way the chaps work, and we call for a big, new reviews. We have a review, and then we start talking about new laws. It's going to take at least a couple of years to get these new laws onto the statute books, by which time all the people who've been heavily engaged in all the skullduggery and the shenanigans up to now are just going to quietly be forgotten, and they'll just slide away scot-free.
So we're not talking about a conspiracy theory. We're talking about a conspiracy.
We're talking about a conspiracy. No, this is no theory. This is reality.
All right. Now, here's the big question, Rowan. If it's a crime now, why can't a detective from Scotland Yard go arrest people today?
Because Scotland Yard have been deliberately and specifically engineered out of the process.
How do they do that?
Well, politically, they're simply told, this is not an area that we want you to investigate.
But that seems remarkably cavalier on the part of any government to simply remove any type of criminal prosecution from an entire sector of society.
Let me give you an illustration. When I was a detective, I could go out on the street, and if I had the evidence, I could arrest a man for an offence, say, of murder, an offence for which he could go to prison for life. I could arrest him, I could take him back to the police station, and if I had the evidence, I could charge him with the offence of murder. And I've done that. Without anybody else's authority or say-so, I could charge a man with offences, serious offences, that would get him life imprisonment. But the moment you came to investigate the financial sector, even in my time, the moment you came to investigate the city, the financial sector, even for offences that carried as a maximum 2 years imprisonment, everything you did had to be reported through the department, in those days, the Department of Trade and Industry, which was the city regulatory agency in those days. You had to report it to the Secretary of State, and he had to say whether or not these people could be charged. So there was always a level of political oversight about what was going on over there, so that Mr. Plod wasn't allowed to exercise his authority unfettered. It's always been the same, and it will always stay like that. This is Britain. It's the way we do things.
So do the police in this country know that when they're being asked to cut back on wages and when they're having their pensions stolen from the city of Wall Street, this is on behalf of their agreement, then, to not prosecute their terrorists? In other words, there is a notion that these are acts of financial terrorism, and, in fact, that the current government is allowing terrorism in the state to occur unchallenged. Financial terrorism. They adhere to an ideology not unlike any other extremist or terrorist, and it's being allowed to thrive here in the city. Did the police, are they upset that the government is giving their blessing to terrorism right here in London.
Well,
Do they upset about it?
I probably have to sort of kind of step back from the word terrorism. It's a phrase you use.
What would you call it? Either terrorism or pedophilia?
No,
what are you more comfortable with? Because these people are being raped financially, and the Scotland Yard's doing nothing.
No, it's not that. I call this organised crime.
Well, why aren't they doing anything?
Because they are not being allowed to. Professionally.
That's not acceptable. You can't say, well, why should anyone... Look, here we have Aston Walker, a.k.a. the Birmingham looter. He served 4 months in prison for looting 200 pounds worth of clothes from H&M. However, he's never offered a deferred prosecution agreement. He's given to banksters who steal billions. Okay, why is it wrong, then, to burn down these towns and say, if you don't want a society that runs on any law and order, let's burn it all down. Burn it all. Why not? Tell the people why they shouldn't burn this city down.
Well, I think
There's no law and order.
You can't. I think it's very difficult to try and make a quantum leap from one to the other. Because nobody wants to see public order suddenly being thrown to the wolves. Nobody wants to see that. But what I think people do want to see is a far greater degree of aggressive, dynamic prosecution being brought against the city banksters, the people who I say are organised criminals. They're committing organised crime. I have written many times that what we need in this country, certainly in the United Kingdom, we need a series of targeted prosecutions of chief and senior executives of financial institutions. You would see a tsunami of compliance. There would be a tidal wave. All of a sudden, these complacent people who've been spending not enough money on providing compliance issues, they'd suddenly get in line, because the last thing they want is to be prosecuted. And the city fathers know this.
All right,
and this
Rowan,
is what they lobby against.
What you're saying is blindingly obvious. And the only conclusion one can make is that the current government, David Cameron, is a corrupt scumbag. All right, listen, Rowan, we're out of time. Thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
It's a great pleasure.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. I want to thank my guest, Rowan Davies. If you want to send me an email, please do so at keiserreport@rttv.ru. Until next time, Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.